Well, the International Development Secretary, Douglas Alexander, is still here, as are three people who've had some involvement with protests, and they take many forms, as you saw there. Barbara Stocking, the director of Oxfam. The comedian Mark Thomas is also here, and Mark King from the Camp for Climate Action, both of whom have been actually out protesting today. As Douglas Alexander's here, what I think you should do, first of all, is tell him what one thing ought to be in the G20 agreement tomorrow. Barbara Stocking.
The G20 must agree a financial stimulus package for the poorest countries in the world and the poorest people. They had nothing to do with what's happened now. They really need that. We estimate they need something like $25 billion now and more in the future because they're now being hit, jobs are going, remittances are being cut, the poorest are getting poorer through no fault of their own.
What do you think, Mark Thomas?
Tax havens. You've got to shut them down. Most hedge funds operate out of tax havens that caused a lot of this damage. We lose about $100 billion in tax evasion, avoidance and tax efficiency as a nation. That's unacceptable. So when I say shut them down, what you have to do is you actually have to enforce, you have to make law that all companies will publish the accounts of their subsidiaries wherever they are. They'll be published all over the world. And that we'll have automatic data sharing within each country. None of this, oh, give us a bit of information if we think you're up to something. And Britain will take sanctions against tax havens that buck the system.
Mark King, what would you think?
Climate change. I mean, the science is clear that if we have a good chance of avoiding runaway climate change, we have to have global emissions peaking within the next sort of 7 or 8 years. And this means it's the decisions taken largely in the next couple of days that are going to do that. And rather than trying to resuscitate these dinosaur high-carbon industries that are going to give us no chance of avoiding dangerous climate change, and then pinning your way out of it on carbon trading, a system you've proven has failed, and saying carbon trading, this complex arrangement of financial dealings, it's like you've learned nothing from the credit crunch. That's not going to save us. And when the credit crunch came home to roost, you can bail the banks out. It was painful, but you can do it. When climate change comes home to roost, the climate doesn't do bailouts.
OK, taking one by one. First of all, poorer countries.
I sincerely hope that we are able to deliver the kind of package that Barbara's been asking for. We've been working for weeks and months to try and deliver that package. I can't guarantee we'll get there, but I can assure you we're working hard. And
to be fair to you, before you came on, she did give you your department a good billing, actually. But now, Mark Thomas's point about tax havens, there are all sorts of questions, Mark, about where these companies are registered, who exercises dominion over them. But you could do something about British tax havens.
And I hope we will, but I hope you'll also agree that tax havens are a classic example of the kind of issue that actually can only be dealt with really effectively in a global financial system by people getting together. We've made some real progress in recent weeks in terms of countries as large as Switzerland, countries as small as Liechtenstein, saying that because of the threat of being named and shamed internationally, they are now going to provide information which simply wasn't available even a few weeks ago. That's a start. It's not the final step. I hope that we can make progress tomorrow.
But you know that actually, we're talking about the British dependencies, Jersey and Guernsey. These are prime examples where actually Britain could go in there and actually shake those places up.
And the risk is that the money that was previously in Guernsey or Jersey would have gone overseas if we don't get the other piece of the jigsaw, which is to make sure it's not one country acting, but it's all countries acting. We've got about 85% of the world's economy represented in the Excel Centre there tomorrow. It's a great opportunity. They've got a heavy responsibility. My hope would be tax havens is one particular area where we take an unprecedented level of coordinated action, because that's the way we'll actually make a difference.
Don't you find it embarrassing? I mean, it's not just places like Jersey and Guernsey and so on. There are British colonies out there that are sheltering all kinds of dodgy operations. Isn't this embarrassing?
Of course we're going to act, but on the other hand, the way that we will make...
We could have acted off our own bat, but we haven't.
But not in a system whereby funds can be transferred literally in the touch of a computer key to another tax haven. The challenge is to work internationally. That's what's different about working within a global economy.
But there's a wonderful moment now. All the things that many of us have been saying for years, like you have to do something about tax havens, even discussing things like currency taxes. There are all sorts of things that many of us have been told for years are absolutely ridiculous, very naive, can't be done. And suddenly it's becoming possible. And we really have to work on those things now and make sure the system is quite different and we try some very different things. This is a moment of change.
Too many things, though, that people are concerned. We'll come to the climate change in a second, don't worry. But there's so many issues that people are exercised about. In that report, there's a man who's out there because he's angry about the closure of post offices. There's a lot of anger, but there's an awful lot of issues.